Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Aarti Mataji, Pawan Prabhuji, Vishwanath Prabhu for leading the chanting today. Let's start with Mangalacharan. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvatam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Dandatanam, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Okay, so we'll continue with our prayer for this week on the most auspicious occasion of Sri Radha Ashtami. We are singing Sri Radhika Ashtakam by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj. So let me post the link, and anybody would like to try today? I did sing yesterday, but I think this is a prayer that most of us are familiar with. Anybody wants to try singing? If not, then I'll continue today, and hopefully tomorrow somebody can take up the service in the spirit of serving our acharyas and Srimati Radhika Rani. Okay, so Sri Radhika Ashtakam. कुङ्कुमाप्तकञ्चनाब्जगर्वहारि गौरभा पीतनाञ्चिताब्जगन्धकीर्तिनिन्दिसौरभा पल्लवेशसूनु सर्ववाञ्छितार्थसाधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका गौरविन्दकान्तिनिन्दिचित्रपट्टशाटिका कृष्णमत्तभृङ्गकेलि फुल्लपुष्पवाटिका कृष्णनित्यसङ्गमार्तपद्मबन्धुराधिका मह्यमात्म पादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका सौकुमार्य सृष्टपल्लवालिकीर्तिनिग्रह चन्द्रचन्दनोत्पलेन्दु सेव्य शीतविग्रह स्वाभिमर्शबल्लवीश कामतापबाधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका विश्ववन्द्ययौवताभिवन्दितापि या रमा रूपनव्ययौवनादि सम्पदानयत्समा शीलहार्दलीलया च सायतो स्थिरनाधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्मदास्य दास्तु राधिका रासलास्य गीतनर्मसत्कलालिपण्डिता प्रेमरम्यरूपवेश सद्गुणालिमण्डिता विश्वनव्यगोपयोषिदालितोऽपि याधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका नित्यनव्यरूपकेलि कृष्णभावसम्पदा कृष्णरागबन्धगोप यावतेषु कम्पदा कृष्णरूपवेशकेलि लग्नसत्समाधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका स्वेदकम्पकण्टकाशुगद्गदादिसञ्चितामर्षहर्षवामतादि भावभूषणाञ्चिता कृष्णनेत्रतोषिरत्नमण्डनालिदाधिका मह्यमात्मपाद पद्मदास्य दास्तु राधिका या क्षणार्धकृष्णविप्रयोगसन्ततोदितानेकदैन्यचापलादिभाववृन्दमोदिता यत्नलब्धकृष्णसङ्गनिर्गताखिलाधिकाः मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका अष्टकेन यष्ट्वनेन नौति कृष्णवल्लभां दर्शनेऽपि शैलजादि योषिदालिदुर्लभं कृष्णसङ्गनन्दितात्मदास्य सीदुभाजनं तं करोति नन्दितालि सञ्चयाशु सजनं मह्यम् आत्मपादपद्मदास्य दास्तु राधिका मह्यमात्मपादपद्म दास्य दास्तु राधिका हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे श्री श्री राधिकाष्टकम की जय। श्रीला कृष्णदास कविराज गोस्वामी महाराज की जय। जगतगुरु श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय। Anyone who would like to read the translation?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Meenu Mataji.
Thank you. Her splendorous golden complexion steals the pride of a golden lotus flower, anointed with a tinge of a red kumkum vermilion. Her sweet fragrance mocks the fame of the aroma of a lotus flower sprinkled with saffron powder. She is fully qualified to fulfill all the desires of the son of the king of the cowherd men. May Sri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. Her amazing and colorful silken garments make the splendor of red coral feel ashamed. She is a garden of blossoming flowers where the maddened bumblebee named Krishna performs amorous pastimes. She worships the sun god daily in order to attain the continual association of her beloved Krishna. May Sri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. Her charming youthful delicacy negates the fame of the freshly sprouted leaves. Her refreshing form is worthy of being served by the cooling moon, sandalwood paste, lotus flowers, and camphor. When she touches the master of the gopis, she dispels the burning heat of his lusty desires. May Sri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. Although the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi, is adored by other youthful goddesses who are themselves glorified throughout the universe, still she is nowhere near Shri Radhika in the matter of beauty, praiseworthy youthfulness, or other divine feminine opulences. There is no one in the material or the spiritual worlds that is superior to Radhika in the expression of naturally loving pastimes. May Shri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. She is very learned in many transcendental arts, such as performing in the rasa dance, singing, and joking. She is decorated with many divine qualities, such as loving nature, exquisite beauty, and wonderful garments and ornaments. Even among the cowherd damsels of Vraja, who are praised by the entire universe, she is the best in every way. May Shri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. She possesses the opulences of eternal youthful beauty, eternal pastimes, and eternal love for Krishna. Her ecstatic feelings of love for Krishna cause the gopis, who are also in love with Krishna, to tremble. She is always attached to meditating on Sri Krishna's beautiful form, ornaments, garments, and pastimes. May Sri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. She is graced with 8 ecstatic symptoms, sattvika bhava, such as trembling, perspiring, standing up on bodily hairs, tears, faltering of the voice, and so forth. She is adorned with different ecstatic emotional ornaments such as impatience, joy, contrariness, and so forth. She is decorated with beautiful jewels that give total delight to the eyes of the Krishna. May Shri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. If she is apart from Krishna for even half a moment, she becomes stricken with wretched suffering, restlessness, and multitude of other ecstatic symptoms of separation. When she regains the association of Krishna after some effort, then all of her anguish immediately vanishes. May Sri Radhika bestow upon me the service of her own lotus feet. It is very difficult for Parvati and other exalted goddesses to attain even a glimpse of Srimati Radharani, who is dear to Lord Krishna. But if someone glorifies her by reciting these 8 verses, then she who is delighted by Krishna's continuous association will grant the sweet nectar offer personal service to that person, who thereby enters the assembly of her similarly delighted girlfriends. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Yes, this prayer is so deep in sweetness and love of God, because Radharani, Srimati Radharani, Shri Radhika is the personification of the Ladini Shakti, the Prema Swarupa of Shri Krishna. So each and every word of this bhajan is so deep. And yes, she is capable of serving Krishna to the fullest in every aspect. And that's how we see that, of course, Krishna, like we see even in the Vishwarupa form, and everything, all devotees are part of Krishna, and all devotees generally aspire to be at the lotus feet of the Lord. So that's why we say that we should never offend a Vaishnava, because when you offend a Vaishnava, the Vaishnava is actually serving the lotus feet and actually is the lotus feet of the Lord. So just like when we walk outside in a hot sun, we can bear the heat of the sun on our head. But if you walk barefoot on a road or on sand, your feet will get burned, right? You'll feel so much more pain on your feet versus on your head. So Vaishnavas, who are the lotus feet of the Lord, when we offend Vaishnavas, then the Lord feels the heat. And that is something that we don't want to. But all the senses of the Lord are served by Srimati Radhika Rani. And actually, those are the devotees of the Lord, who are the senses of the Lord. So that's why yesterday Prabhupada was saying that the central point of Bhagavad Gita is that instead of serving our own senses, we should serve the senses of the Lord. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. That is Bhakti Ruchyate. So that is what Srimati Radhika is teaching us here. And Sri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami is teaching us through this beautiful bhajan. Okay, so we'll continue with chapter 34, Srila Prabhupada Leela Jet Age Paribhajik Acharya. Like we're saying, Prabhupada is traveling at the speed of light, or even faster than that, from Bombay to Malaysia to Sydney, and now back to Calcutta, where he's organizing this 10-day Pandal festival, just like it was done in Bombay. And Prabhupada established the worship of Shri Radha Gopinath in Sydney, and now in Calcutta, it is back to the worship of Shri Radha Govind Dev. So, and they also purchased the land in Mayapur, which is where now today we have wonderful temple of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu coming up very soon, the temple of Vedic Planetarium. But this is March 1971. So they have purchased the land, and now actually from Calcutta, after finishing the 10-day Pandal, Prabhupada has traveled now to Moscow, Russia, or he's planning to travel to Moscow, Russia. So he's requesting his disciples to arrange for that meeting with Professor Kotowski, with whom Prabhupada has been corresponding. So let's continue. In March 1971, Professor G.G. Kotowski had replied to Krishnadas' letter. I thank you for your information about Swami Bhaktivedanta's lecturing tour. If he would come to Moscow, the Soviet scholars doing research in ancient Indian culture would be very happy to meet him in the Institute of Oriental Studies, USSR Academy of Sciences. I would be thankful to you for your information on the dates of Swami Bhaktivedanta's arrival and stay in the USSR. Srila Prabhupada had personally replied to Professor Kotowski. It was understood that you and your university are interested in hearing about Krishna culture and philosophy. This ancient Krishna culture and philosophy is the oldest in the world or in the universe. At least from a historical point of view, it is not less than 5,000 years old. Perhaps you may know that I have started this cultural movement since 1966, and it is already spreading all over the world. Krishna culture is so popular in India that even the government attracts many foreigners by Air India timetable to visit Vrindavan, the land of Krishna culture. Enclosed, please find one page from the latest Air India timetable, April 1971, wherein the Krishna culture is depicted for general attraction. My life is dedicated to spreading this Krishna culture all over the world. I think if you give me a chance to speak about the great Krishna culture and philosophy in your country, you will very much appreciate this simple program with great profit. This culture is so well planned that it would be acceptable by any thoughtful man throughout the whole world. Having preached a year in the Eastern Hemisphere, Prabhupada was eager to return to the West, and he planned to fly to Moscow and on to Europe. For Prabhupada and his traveling companions, Sham Sundar and Arvind, getting tourist visas for Russia was simple. They would take a 5-day government controlled tour with every activity planned by the Soviet Tourist Bureau and everything paid for in advance. Captain Lal, the pilot of the flight to Moscow, considered Prabhupada an important passenger and came back to visit him during the flight. They spoke of Prabhupada's movement, his chances of lecturing in Moscow, and of Bombay, where Prabhupada was trying to purchase land. Captain Lal invited Prabhupada to the cockpit, and Prabhupada came and sat behind the captain, asking technical questions about the equipment and the flight. Prabhupada and Captain Lal agreed to meet again in Moscow. Prabhupada, his secretary, and his servant cleared Soviet customs and immigration quickly and smoothly, and a government tourist guide escorted them by limousine to the Hotel National. The hotel near Red Square, Lenin's tomb, and the Kremlin was expensive but plain. Prabhupada found his room dingy and cramped, with barely space for a bed and 2 chairs. The room for Shamsundar and Arvind was far away, and Prabhupada decided that Arvinda should share the room with him instead, crowding Prabhupada's room all the more. Arvinda told the hotel manager that they would not eat the hotel fare but would have to cook their own meals. The manager refused at first, but finally allowed them use of the maid's kitchen. That problem solved, the next was getting food. Prabhupada sent Shamsundara out. Across the street, Shamsundara found a milk and yogurt store, but he returned to Prabhupada's room without any fruit, vegetables, or rice. Prabhupada sent him out again, and this time Shamsundara was gone practically all day, returning with only a couple of cabbages. Prabhupada sent him out the next day for rice. When Shamsundara returned with rice after several hours, Prabhupada saw that it was a poor North Korean variety, very hard. Prabhupada asked for fruit, but Shamsundara had to hike for miles through the city to find anything fresh, a few red cherries. Prabhupada remained peaceful and regulated, keeping to his daily schedule. He would rise early and translate, and in the cool of early morning, he would go out for a walk through the all but deserted streets. Prabhupada, wearing a saffron chadar, strode quickly, Shamsundara sometimes running ahead to photograph him. As they would pass Lenin's mausoleum, a queue would already be forming. Just see, Prabhupada commented one morning. That is their God. The people don't understand the difference between the body and the spirit. They accept the body as the real person. Prabhupada appreciated the sparseness of the traffic, some trolleys and bicycles, but mostly pedestrians. As he walked among the old ornate buildings, he saw elderly women hosing the wide streets. A good practice, he said. The Russian people appear to live structured, regulated lives, much more so than the Americans. These simple, austere people, unspoiled by the rampant hedonism so common in America, were fertile for Krishna consciousness, but devoid of spiritual sustenance, they appeared morose. Prabhupada had Shyam Sundara arrange a meeting with Professor Kotowski and invite Captain Lal to come along. The tourist bureau provided a car and guide, and Prabhupada and his party rode outside the city to Professor Kotowski's office in an old white brick building at the Academy of Sciences. When Prabhupada arrived, the middle-aged Russian professor, dressed in a grey suit, got up from his cluttered desk and welcomed Prabhupada into his small office. Professor Kotowski appeared a bit hesitant, however, more cautious than in his letters. When Shyamsundara mentioned Prabhupada's eagerness to lecture before interested scholars at the academy, Professor Kotowski flatly refused. It would never be allowed. Prabhupada was disappointed. The next moment, however, Prabhupada seemed unaffected and began speaking in his humble, genteel manner, sitting in a straight-backed office chair beside Professor Kotowski, who sat at his desk. Shyamsundara turned on the tape recorder, which the professor eyed cautiously but didn't object to. Prabhupada. The other day, I was reading in the paper, Moscow News. There was a communist congress, and the president declared that we are ready to get others' experiences to improve. So I think the Vedic concept of socialism or communism will much improve the idea of communism. Professor Kotowski listened intently and politely as his foreign visitor explained how the Grihastha in Vedic culture provides for everyone living in his house, even for the lizards, and how, before taking his meal, he calls in the road to invite any hungry person to come and eat. In this way, Prabhupada explained, there are so many good concepts about the socialist idea of communism. So I thought that these ideas might have been distributed to some of your thoughtful men. Therefore, I was anxious to speak. Professor Kotowski's academic interest was piqued. You know, it is interesting, he said, his articulate English heavily accented. As it is here in our country, there is now great interest in the history of old thought. He described the accomplishments of his colleagues and himself, particularly a booklet they had recently prepared highlighting Soviet studies in Indology. He said he would like to give a copy to Srila Prabhupada. Professor Kotowski. You will be interested to discover that we published not all but some Puranas, then some parts of the Ramayana, 8 volumes in Russian of the Mahabharata, and also a second edition of the Mahabharata translated by different people in full and published. Manusmriti is also translated in full and published with Sanskrit commentaries. And such was the great interest that all of these publications were sold in a week. They are now completely out of stock. It is impossible to get them in the book market after a month. Such a great interest among reading people here in Moscow and the USSR towards ancient Vedic culture. Prabhupada. Among these Puranas, the Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Mahapurana, and he told of his own translation of Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of the Vedic desire tree. He would show some volumes to the professor if he was interested. Professor Katowski said the Moscow and the Leningrad libraries had nearly all the major texts of Indian culture in Sanskrit. These libraries housed not only ancient texts but more recent literature as well, comprising an up-to-date study of Hinduism. Hinduism, Prabhupada interrupted, is a very complex topic, and they both laughed. Professor Kotowski acknowledged that Hinduism was more than a religion, it was a way of life. But Prabhupada explained that the name Hindu was actually a misnomer. The real term to explain Vedic culture was Varnashrama. Briefly, Prabhupada described the 4 orders: Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Professor Kotowski: you have told that in any society there are 4 divisions, but it is not so easy to distinguish. For instance, one can group together different social classes and professional groups into 4 divisions in any society. There is no difficulty. The only difficulty is, for instance, in socialist society, in our country and other socialist societies, how can you distinguish productive group and workers? Prabhupada welcomed the professor's questions, although grounded in Soviet socialist vested interests. Prabhupada considered the professor not so much an academician as a pawn of the Soviet university system. Much as one political power tries to understand its adversary, the professor was inquiring into Indian culture so that his government might penetrate it with their own ideology. Behind Professor Kotowski's apparent interest in Vedic culture, Prabhupada could see the view of the Communist Party, a view diametrically opposed to Vedic philosophy. Nevertheless, Prabhupada tactfully continued to present Krishna consciousness in accord with Parampara, and he tried to convince Professor Kotowski through scripture and logic. Quoting Bhagavad Gita, a shastra with which the professor was familiar in his own way, Prabhupada described Lord Krishna as the creator of the 4 divisions of society. Professor Kotowski immediately countered with the theory of the Soviet scholars that the Varnashrama divisions were a recent addition to Vedic culture. He also again registered his opinion that the divisions of Varnashrama had no meaning within socialism. Professor Kotowski: there is a great distinction between socialist society and all societies preceding socialism, because in modern Western society, you can group all social and professional classes in the particular class divisions: Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, or factory owners, and Shudras, or menial workers. But here, we have no Vaishyas, because we have administrative staff in factories, managerial staff. You can call them Kshatriyas, and then Shudras, the workers themselves, but not this intermediate class. Prabhupada: that is stated, Kalau Shudra Sambhavaha. In this age, practically all men are Shudras. That is stated. But if there are simply Shudras, then the social order will be disturbed. In spite of your state of Shudras, the Brahmanas are there. That is necessary. So if you do not divide the social order in such a way, then it will be chaos. That is the scientific estimation of the Vedas. You may belong to the Shudra class, but to maintain the social order, you have to train some of the Shudras to become Brahmanas. It cannot depend on the Shudras. Prabhupada gave a standard analogy, comparing the social body to the human body. All the parts are necessary, not only the legs, but the belly, the arms, and the head. Otherwise, he said, it will not work properly. As long as this is going on, there will be some disturbance. Modern society's missing point, Prabhupada said, was an understanding of the purpose of human life. They do not know what is the next life, he said. There is no department of knowledge or scientific department to study what is there after finishing this body. Professor Kotowski objected, politely, completely. Swamiji, he said, when the body dies, the owner also dies. Prabhupada marked his reply. No, Prabhupada quickly replied, this fact you must know. Why is there no department of knowledge in this university to study this fact scientifically? That is my proposition. The department is lacking. It may be as you say, it may be as I say, but there must be a department of knowledge. Now, recently, a cardiologist, a doctor in Montreal and Toronto, has accepted that there is a soul. I had some correspondence with him. He strongly believes that there is a soul. Prabhupada continued to build his argument. We accept knowledge from authority. The professor countered that everything had to be accepted on the basis of empirical evidence. But then, in mid sentence, he stopped arguing and inquired, have you many branches of your society in the world? Prabhupada began speaking about ISKCON, with the 65 branches all around the world, and of how he was going next to Paris, where his disciples had recently acquired a new center, and of how the American boys and girls especially were joining his movement. He told of the 4 prohibitive rules: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, and no gambling, and of the books he had published. As Prabhupada described the workings of his movement, Professor Kotowski nodded approvingly. When Prabhupada returned to comparing Krishna consciousness to communism, he concluded that the two philosophies were in agreement, and both stressed surrender to an authority. The devotee surrenders to Krishna, the communist to Lenin. Prabhupada, our life is by surrender, is it not? Do you disagree with this point? Kotowski, to some extent, you surrender. Prabhupada, yes, to the full extent. Kotowski, you have to surrender to the society, for instance, the whole people. Prabhupada, yes, to the whole people, or to the state, or king, or government, or whatever you say. The surrender must be there. It may be different. Kotowski, the only difficulty is we cannot have surrender to government or to a king. The principal difference is of surrender to a king who is a single person or to the whole society. Prabhupada, no, that is a change of color only, but the surrender is there. The principle of surrender is there. Whether you surrender to monarchy, democracy, aristocracy, or dictatorship, you have to surrender. That is a fact. Without surrender, there is no life. It is not possible. So we are educating persons to surrender to the Supreme, wherefrom you get all protection. Just like Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. So surrender is there. No one can say, no, I am not surrendered to anyone. The difference is where he surrenders. And the ultimate surrendering object is Sri Krishna. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita it is said, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. After surrendering to so many things, birth after birth, when one is factually wise, he surrenders unto me. Professor Kotowski agreed. But surrender had to be accompanied by revolution, he said. The French Revolution, for example, was a revolt against one kind of surrender, and yet the revolution itself was another surrender to the people. So it is not enough to come full stop. Professor argued. Surrender is to be accompanied with revolt against surrender to other people. Prabhupada, yes, the surrender will be full stop when it is surrender to Krishna. That is full stop. No more surrender. Other surrender you have to change by revolution. But when you come to Krishna, then it is sufficient. You are satisfied. Just like I give you one example. A child is crying and people change laps. Oh, it has not stopped. But as soon as the baby comes to the lap of its mother, Kotowski, it stops. Prabhupada, yes, full satisfaction. So this surrender, the changes will go on in different categories. Sum total of all these surrenders is surrender to Maya, material illusion. But the final surrender is to Krishna, and then you will be happy. Okay. So we'll pause here. We can continue from here tomorrow. Hare Krishna. So beautifully Prabhupada is explaining everything, right? So again, where is this all coming from? Everything is blessing of the Lord to his pure devotees, because even Saraswati Devi sits and sings from the tongue of a pure devotee. So, yeah, like a simple example of a child crying, changing the laps, but ultimately waiting for the love of his or her mother. And once they come in the lap of the mother, and our mother, like the prayer that we are singing, is Srimati Radharani, the eternal supreme mother of all entities. And yeah, when we take shelter of her, then all our needs, necessities, desires, everything is fulfilled by the love and care of the Supreme Mother. So that is the teachings that Srila Prabhupada is giving here. Russia is a very, of course, even now when we think Russia, we feel like it's communist country, so rigid, right? But in this 1971, Prabhupada is able to go there, and again, the vision that we don't have, a pure devotee has. He is able to see behind just the veil of communism that these people are really sincere and they are ready to receive the message of Krishna consciousness. And the seed that Prabhupada sowed in 1971, today, actually Russia is kind of the second largest country in terms of Krishna consciousness after India. So many devotees have joined the movement from Russia. we see so many of the ISKCON Kirtans that you sing, all of those were coming in front of my eyes as Prabhupada is walking on the streets, Shyamasundar Prabhu taking those pictures. We have seen so many pictures of Srila Prabhupada walking in the streets of Russia in the backdrop of those big ornate buildings, which are looking like palaces in the background. And all the Sankirtans that we have seen over the years of ISKCON, where so many Russian devotees, Prabhujis, Matajis, they're dancing on the streets to the Kirtan, to the Rath Yatra. So all of those, the seed was sown right here when Srila Prabhupada went for the first time. And after that, of course, many of Prabhupada's disciples, including my Guru Maharaj, as well as Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and many other devotees, they persisted through the mid 80s and 90s revolution in Soviet Union. It was very hard that time, but again, by the selfless service of so many devotees, they printed books. They had to hide the books, and when they were going to Russia, they had to take just small copies of manuscripts, and then they had to kind of print everything in the basement and hiding from the government officials there. So much of kind of dangerous work that had to be performed to preach the mission. For us, it is so easy. We have to just go and speak or take the books, and we easily go here in the streets or set up tables. But the kind of selfless service that those initial disciples did in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that is just incredible. And yeah, because of all those toil that they did, all this selfless seva they did, today we have so many centers, so many thousands and lakhs of devotees in Russia. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Anybody else would like to share anything from today's reading?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, everyone. Just as we were reading, there were a couple thoughts that were coming, the clear difference between the Uttama Adhikari or Bhakti Uttama, like Srila Rupa Goswami has quoted that he has said the verse Anya Bhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavratam Anukulena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktir Uttama. Srila Prabhupada has continuously displayed that Bhaktir Uttama because as a Uttama Adhikari, you should be able to stand up or fight for the rightfulness of the Vedas. And he's doing that no matter where is he going and who is he speaking to. He's not shy at all to defend the Vedas. So that is something to learn. And the unalloyed devotion of Shyam Sundara for going miles and miles and just to get two cabbages, be gone all day and trying to find rice and everything. I think they really set the tone for what we need to be like. And the second part was where he was talking about the head, the arms, the belly, and the legs, like head being Brahmana. Only the legs can't take you if your head doesn't guide you. So you need that as arms being the Kshatriyas and the belly being Vaishyas. So, defining the four Varnashram, that we need the whole body, all the body parts to work in sync to accomplish and to go towards Krishna. So just two thoughts that I had. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Very nice. Yes, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Mataji. Yes, very rightly said. Yeah, and these devotees, like, yeah, you said, the early disciples of Srila Prabhupada, again, just the surrender. Prabhupada is speaking of surrender here, how surrendered they were to their Guru Maharaj, right? This is like a unknown Indian man, 70-year-old, coming from a country which they had never seen, never heard of. He comes and preaches what he preaches, pure message of God. And that purity attracts them and completely melts their heart, with which they surrender, right? So, and now they have left everything, of course, they left their country, they left their family, and now they're traveling all over the world with Srila Prabhupada. And like you said, yeah, there's nothing, not even a bicycle. He's just walking and going miles and miles away just to get some cherries, some rice, some cabbages. What level of dedication and what level of service and surrender. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yes. Anybody else would like to share anything?
Yeah, Hare
Yes,
Krishna
Lord.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, the good thing today we learn is the final surrender. The example what Srila Prabhupada has mentioned is like the uh, child, whenever he or she goes to the lap of her mother or his mother, right? He or she gets full satisfaction and full peace. So that is what the final surrender and fully surrender to God is only the peace and satisfaction. That is the very good thing they learned. Though we knew, but the example is really connecting.
Prabhu. Yeah. And Guru is like representative of the Lord. For us, Guru connects us back to that mother, right? So like Krishna's two expansions, we say, right? Nityananda Prabhu and Srimati Radharani. Nityananda Prabhu is the Adi Guru. Srimati Radharani is the Adi Mata, right? She is the eternal mother. So when we take shelter of the Adi Guru, our spiritual master, then he connects us back to Shri Radha and Shri Krishna. Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, dear devotees. So we'll stop here for today. Thank you for joining us for this japa. And when we come together and do the japa, it kind of becomes kirtan, right? Because that is the order from Mahaprabhu to do sankirtan. And even though we are doing japa, but since we are doing it as a group, as a community, as a congregation, it actually becomes kirtan. And like Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that नाचे रे हमार मन Jayalita Kaura Chandra bole nache Ramar man, right? So our mind starts dancing when we are doing japa, also when we are doing it as a sankirtan and together. So thank you for coming together every day and giving us everybody's association so that we can progress together as Srila Prabhupada wanted his society to progress together with cooperation and unity. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंतकोटि वैष्णवृंद की जय। जगद्गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। नीताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Just